Let's go.
Let's go.
Hello and welcome to the Human Experience Show. I'm here with Mahesh.
Hey, Ang.
Sup?
Sup, bro?
And we're going to talk about the human experience and I guess what it's been for you and maybe where it's heading. And let's see where the conversation takes us.
Yep.
I want to start with, what does waking up feel like?
Great question.
And how is it changed? So like waking up at say 25-year-old Mahesh and now when you're doing all this door knocking.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. Waking up 25, I'd wake up at I just started working, finished university, probably get up at 6:37, and I'd be out. This was in Auckland, first gig. Fast forward, Tokyo, probably waking up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Hectic days.
And do you just get out of bed immediately? You're like, wait.
Yeah.
Alarm goes off, you're like,
Bam,
you're off.
I'm out.
You're not. Instagram hasn't been invented, so you're not.
No, I'm not. Then startup land, Canva days, days. Wake up when I'm at my optimum, 3:30, 4 a.m. Out. And
Nah, hold up. When are you sleeping?
probably 8:39.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It is one of my biggest joys is waking up before the rest of the world has woken up. Because it's just quiet. You know, it's just quiet and it's peaceful.
Yeah.
And noise hasn't filtered through the day yet.
It's such a healthy way to do it. The way I was doing it, I was ineffective at working. So I would just work till like fucking 3 a.m. and there's just no distractions. After midnight, there's no distractions. No one's messaging you and you're like, cool, I can do some work. So I guess I'd be hitting the bed and you'd be waking up.
100%.
And we'd be finding that
sweet. I love it. Right now, waking up about 6:37, and it's a bit of a slower wake up.
Okay.
Because I'd wake up and I'd lie in bed and I'd get like 2-3 hours of work done in about an hour and a half on my phone. Just because there's so many emails to get through, so many moving parts.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I wish I was waking up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I know that's when I'm like at peak. But I haven't got that system. Also, because I'm in a sprint right now, right? I've got 6 to 8 weeks for an election to finish. It's not about when I was in startup land, it's a long-term sustainable, okay, go to bed at 8:30, wake up at 4, go, right now it's just a hectic sprint.
It's so funny you say that because most people would be like, the sprint is when they would be waking up at 4 a.m. They'd be like, fuck, I need to like get all this work done. I got to wake up early, get it done. And like long term, it isn't sustainable, but it's okay. But for you, it's the opposite.
It is, for sure. If I am performing sustainably, I am up at 4. Man, I just, even as I say it, it's like, it makes me salivate like in my brain because I'm like, oh man, that'd be so good. Just to get up and it's just quiet. And you get out, it's dark. Like the world's at peace, I'm at peace. I like take my time, have a coffee, settle in. Oh, amazing. Not happening right now.
Yeah, I feel that. When I wake up, on the good days, I wake up before I have to do anything. So like I hit the gym now a couple times a week, and on the gym days, it's just like get up 20 minutes before you need to be at the gym. The bag's already packed, so you just pick it up, brush your teeth, you're out the door. But on the other days, I like wake up, go for a walk, read a book while walking barefoot, and it's just like no one is really out. Sometimes somebody's walked their dog and hasn't picked up dog shit, and you step in that. It happened on my second walk. It happened on my second walk ever. I stepped in dog shit and I was like, what am I supposed to do? I'm like 1 minute into this walk and I was like, fuck, I'll just keep walking on the grass.
Right, I'm just going to go, I'm trying to get the dog shit out of my head.
But then like for the next few walks, I was like real anxious about it. So I was like, every few steps I'd look down and just make sure there's no dog poop. So trauma gets you. But just the stillness in the morning is real nice, and it's not available everywhere else. Like one of the things I really like about Auckland, like I was in New York, and New York's great. I was there for whatever 5 days, but there's just people everywhere. You're like, oh, I'll go to Central Park. It's a nice park. There's people everywhere. The whole place is covered. I'm like, there's maybe 1 million people in Central Park because there's just no secluded area. Whereas in Auckland, you're like, hey, you can go to the beach at 7 a.m. I haven't done this, I'm guessing, but I've seen people do this, and there's just like, they'll post stories up and there's just no one else at the beach. And it's like, yo, if this was in Italy, this beautiful beach, 1,000 people there already. And so we definitely have this luxury, I feel.
It is a luxury. It is a luxury. It's magical that way, but definitely Auckland has an opportunity to up its tempo. It needs to up its tempo. So I'm excited about a bit more New York in Auckland.
Okay. In what way?
Life, pizzazz.
Yeah, true. It would be nice.
You know, just fun, frolic. Restaurants, different cultures, even more. People feeling like they're winning. People feeling like in Auckland you'd have an opportunity to do fun things, creative things, and we are. People feeling like we're hitting global standards. Like you go to New York, and we're not going to be New York. We don't need to be New York. You feel like New York's the middle of the world. It's amazing, right? Like this amazing, so many cultures, languages, opportunity. You get that vibe in Sydney for Sydney standards, right? Like you're like, this is about right for Australia. What we have right now in Auckland is not about right for Auckland, right? It's not. It's just, it's sad, and it
is sad, right? Like it's like actually sad. You're like, fuck, I love this place. Like it's so beautiful. I love the people here. And then you talk to people sort of my age, and they're all off to London or moved over to Australia, and they come back here and they're like, fuck, there's nothing to do. I can't just like go out on a Wednesday and there'll just be stuff happening. Like I have to see what's coming up 2 weeks in advance and plan it just to sort of do something. At least that's been my experience. And so it'd be great if you could fix that for us.
Done. Tomorrow. Yeah, man. It's to be honest, actually, it's quite, in my opinion, it's quite easily fixable.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Like this isn't that complex a problem.
Yeah, but people are making it seem like it is. How do you fix it?
Like anything, it's about priorities, right? Having a bit of a game plan, getting a few people aligned, and then progress over perfection, right? So,
I like that.
Yeah, right. Like it's not about ideologies. We're not. I do a lot of door knocking, obviously.
How many doors?
4,000.
4,000. And over how long?
It's been about 4 months.
Yeah. 1,000
a month.
1,000 a month.
And it's going to get more hectic. Like
it's like 50 a day if you're just doing weekdays.
Yeah, totally. And obviously there are some days where I do way more, and some days I do way less. It's funny. I end up having this conversation with a lot of. Recently, it's been happening with a lot of Greens supporters. I want us to be Sweden, and I want us to be Denmark, and I want us to be Norway. And that's the imagination that New Zealand has of ourselves. We're this socially progressive, amazing place, and everything should be, things should be free. Education should be free. We should be able to, everybody should have equitable opportunities, right? Everybody wants that. But how do we get there? Right? What do we do first? And what do we do second? What do we do third? So you ask me, how do we do it? We get our priorities right. And we get the first step. We lay the foundation. Then we take a second step. And then we take a third step. And then we take a fourth step. And we get the economy going enough. And there's a level of activity, etc. Get it going through enterprise. And then we really invest into amazing things.
Yeah.
Right? Like an amazing city. And sometimes there's this notion that why can't we do that now? And that's something I have a conversation with a lot of green supporters. Like, you can't. You just can't. If you've got a household and you have this much money, you can't like paint the house red and do this and do that and have all the like gimmicks and stuff. You can't. You've got to like have a level of wealth in the household. And then like, okay, now we can afford to do this. And now we can afford to do this. And so we got to get there.
It makes a lot of sense. It's like, it can't be that hard. We're not the first city in the world. In fact, we're one of the newest cities in the world, as far as I can tell. And so it's like, not one of the better planned ones, albeit. But it's like, hey, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just look at what's been done, apply it to New Zealand. But I guess it is about getting the priorities straight. Because if you're not saying, hey, these are the things that are important to us, or in fact, this is the thing which is most important. Did you know the word the priorities like isn't a plural? I need to get the
right.
Like the word priority is just like it's just
I love
one.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
So whenever I ask founders and whenever I'm doing any consulting or trying to help someone, and I go, what are your priorities? And I presume I don't know the thematics around plural and singular around priorities, but I go, what's your first priority? Oh, what are your priorities? And then they name like 4 things. And I'm like, okay, what's number 1? And they state it. And then I'm like, okay, so what number 2 means it's number 2. That means you hit number 1 first. You absolutely make sure that number 1's going to get hit. And then you can afford to look at number 2. Otherwise, you're spreading your bets. Now, that's a different set of strategies. But what tends to work in high performance environments, and if you really want to make sure you get stuff done, is what is the non-negotiable? What is number 1? And people really struggle with that. Companies struggle with that. Startups struggle with that. No. I want to have 2. I want to have 3. No. Sorry. What is number 1? Can you just work out what is the non-negotiable number 1? And the people and companies and whatever it is that end up winning in a big way, in my opinion, one of the key things is they're very clear. What is number 1? Because you're also saying, I'm willing to let go of all the other stuff. You would know this, right? Like there's so many things in your life you've achieved where you're like...
easier said than done though, right? It's like, first even just getting to the stage of being like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write down everything which is important to me. For a lot of people, it's just ethereal. Like it's just in your head. Or it's in your head and it's subconscious. So you're making decisions by this like matrix. You don't even know what the weights are in this matrix, and you don't even know what the columns are. And it might be like, family is important and health is important. There might be social status is important. But unless you've like sat down and thought about it and thought about, hey, why am I making these decisions? Then you're just living this sort of like unconscious life. And so being able to get to that one priority, I guess first would be like, well, what are all my priorities? And then, getting to that just one just gives you just this like laser, because then you can just be like, cool, how am I spending my time? How am I doing activities? It's like, oh, I spend an hour a day doing this. Does that line up with this thing which I say is number 1? And you're like, oh, not really. Like, laters. See you later. What would be, in clear terms, what should be the priority for the country?
I'll touch on that. I think you brought up something really good. So you could argue there's maybe 3 stages or 3 different ways or situations you could be in. Unconscious, cruising. Number 2, portfolio strategy. I'm going to spread my bets. 3rd, risk return. Right. Number 1, I'm going to focus on one thing. I think the portfolio strategy delivers average results, safe, secure, right? So as long as you want sort of mid-level kind of goals, which is absolutely fine. That doesn't make you cooler, sexier, or anything. It doesn't make you less. It is what you want, right? But if you want to hit high performance results, then you go for, like this higher, like just 1 or 2 focus points. And that's the least riskiest way of achieving like a high performance thing, right? Like where you put all your resources and very clear, that's it. I've I'm on the battle. There's a story of everybody getting onto the beach, all the soldiers, and the captain burns all the ships and goes, just one way, fellas.
Oh yeah,
that way.
This happened.
Yeah.
This actually happened. This was the Spanish conquistadors when they landed in America. Maybe not the best, the best morals, but it worked. They're like, we can't go anywhere. There's no plan B. I had this when I was playing tennis. My coach, this is back when I wanted to be a sports doctor for Arsenal. This is my phone numbers. I'm not going to say it.
Okay, cool. Something Arsenal.
Yeah, something Arsenal, which gives you like not that many options. I'll just blurt that out.
If you want to date Ang, please go something Arsenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't call me. Text me. Don't call me. And my tennis coach at the time, he's like, maybe somebody else was like, what's it's hard to be a doctor. What's your plan B? I was like, I don't have a plan B. I just want to be a sports doctor. And then the coach was like, the best tightrope walkers in the world are the ones with no nets, because you fall off, you die. So you just gotta really focus. Turns out I didn't focus. I went to none of my classes. It was boring as shit. And then I switched to engineering. But yeah, there's something about that, just that singular focus.
So you asked me what's most important for Auckland, right?
I said the country, but give me Auckland. Give me Auckland.
Yeah. So what's important? Unfortunately, I'm saying this because it's a sad state of affairs that this is what needs to be addressed. It's safety. You can't.
It is it's just come out of nowhere, or maybe it hasn't. But like for me, it's just like
you can't. Now it's an interesting one, right? Because high performance also tends to happen when your back's against the wall. But you can't. There's this line around where you can't. Like there has to be a minimum standard of safety. Right? If you're fighting for your life, or you can't put food on the table or something. This discussion around high performance priorities is ridiculous, right? Like you need to get to a minimum standard. And unfortunately, as a country, when business owners and residents are feeling unsafe, when they don't feel like they can walk to work, when wives are calling husbands and going and making sure that they're safe, when they don't have enough faith the police are going to come through, it's not okay. And that's also a story around the kind of country and culture that New Zealand is. Now, that same level of safety is not required in the US because it's a high volatile kind of country, right? Like you have high highs and low lows. That's normal. It's normal for its story. New Zealand is not that kind of country. We're 5 million people, therefore we need to make pragmatic, practical decisions where, we have to get things right. We're not anti-fragile, right? Like India, US has so much more anti-fragility. Like civil war happens in one corner, country's fine. We get hit, right? So we have to get things in order. And the amount of crime and the lack of safety is like, we're not growing and prospering without that being addressed. So my first goal, incredibly for a growth guy, is I got to make sure that Auckland Central is safe. I have to. Like and anyone that doesn't talk about it as the number one priority doesn't make sense. Like, what are you talking? Like, you can't talk about anything else. You gotta, people need to feel incredibly safe in New Zealand. It's part of our story. Our story is New Zealand Herald headlines is cat stuck in tree. That's our story, right? Like that's there's nearly like this perverse pride in that. Yeah. And we don't have that. And we need to get that back.
That's awesome. Man, I didn't realize how big a problem it was until you started sharing some of the stats around. It was like a RAM rate every 18 hours. And then one of my friend's cars got broken into. They stole tennis rackets out the back of the car. Police did nothing about it because they're under-resourced and understaffed. And then today I found out there'd been cars in our car park where we work, like directly under where we work, had been broken into in the last couple of weeks. And they're like, this never used to happen. We used to leave our cars unlocked a number of years ago. And this is, for me, who lives probably a pretty sheltered life, I'm like, well, this crime's come out of nowhere, but it hasn't come out of nowhere, right? Like a number of things have happened which probably have increased crime. But
It has. And I don't like it when I probably don't get into deep, long discussions with people sometimes who suggest this. Oh, it's a global thing. Or, oh, it's COVID. I'm sorry. Well, I can't accept that. I'm putting my hand up to be a leader within the community. That's not acceptable to me. So it's fine if certain people want to okay it. It's not like we're not growing, we're not becoming the imagination we have of ourselves unless we get this sorted. And this is a non-negotiable.
100%. I
So-
fully thought you were going to say like something around, making us richer as a nation, but you're totally right. Like you got to get the safety done first. On the richer stat though, a friend of mine who's got an ed tech company, he was in the States and they were visiting some schools and they're like, oh wow, like the schools here, they have heating and they have Chromebooks for their students to use. And in New Zealand, you don't have heating in a lot of schools, and you have like crappy furniture, and the technology doesn't work. And we're like, why is that? And then he looked up and told me New Zealand's GDP, if we were a US state, so you just take all the states, stack rank them by highest GDP to lowest GDP, and you pretend New Zealand is a state. Can you guess where we would be?
Are we in the lower quartile? The lower quarter?
We are second to last. The only state which is poorer than us by GDP is Mississippi. And Mississippi gets made fun of for being like a really poor state. And so I was like, wow, I didn't like, we think New Zealand, we're like, oh, we're first world and we think of ourselves as like a rich nation. And then you're the 51st state and you compare ourselves to Australia where I think the GDP, I think here was like 40,000 per like GDP per capita, and in Australia is like 60,000. And you go to Australia and you can feel it. You go to Melbourne and there's like so much more stuff happening. Melbourne's actually really in debt at the moment because they invested too much in infrastructure. But I think that's a brilliant thing. I reckon 10 years down the line, they're like, actually, we're glad we borrowed all this money when it was cheap. So
investing in infrastructure is fine, right? It doesn't affect GDP per capita.
Yep.
In fact, you're making an argument for GDP per capita to increase. And it shows courage from leaders around. Okay, we're taking a bet. We're backing ourselves. Yeah, my heart sinks as you talk about that. I mean, mainly because we have so much opportunity. We have challenges, but we have so much opportunity. We had 2 amazing islands, and just there's so much space, so much land. Yeah, we just need to start we need to come up with clear about a vision, which I'd like to think we're crafting in the party, and then lay the foundation. One thing I've been really excited about what the party's put forward has been practical foundational things, which getting transport, getting housing going, etc. And foundational things, which is good. Getting law and order. It's exactly the reason why I'm part of this party. So yeah, get those foundations and then having some imagination in regards to where we're going.
Epic. We've actually jumped to the end of the story. You really like Auckland.
Yeah.
I actually know this story, but I'm going to ask it because it's funny. How did you choose New Zealand?
Yeah. So I was 14 years old. I'm 43 now.
Everyone listening or watching, they're like, damn, he's 43.
Those gray hairs are starting to come, man. Like they're really starting to come through now.
True.
Yeah. Anyway, I was 13. I was starting to not enjoy Singapore that much because I think I probably have ADD or ADHD or something. I was bright, but I think I needed a much more exploratory environment. I was doing well in school, but clearly I think my parents could see that a less claustrophobic environment than Singapore was healthy for me. And when the Ministry of Education came through, the New Zealand Ministry of Education came through, and all these high schools came over, and they looked at all the brochures, and I saw green grass, and in New Zealand you have first 11, second 11, third 11, fourth 11, different sports teams. In Singapore, it's like one football team, and that's it. Like, and if you were chubby and unfit, you're not getting in, right? So,
But because there's just not enough land, or
yeah,
okay,
and it's not a priority, right? You're not like New Zealand. There's some notion you may become an athlete, and you may in Singapore. Like, what are you like? It's not. The whole system is geared, and they've tried to change it, but the whole system is geared in regards to making sure that people got into great industries and got into professional services. That was the only thing the country had. So when I looked at those brochures, and I also saw as a 14-year-old cute little girls, I was like, oh yeah, that's an awkward turn of phrase. But anyway, I was like, let's go.
I get it. I was 14. I get it.
Yeah. So yeah. And then what the funny thing is, didn't even take 5 minutes to contemplate. Like, I didn't. My dad said, do you want to go learn about life in New Zealand? There's no like, I'm like, yeah, done. Let's go. Like, there was nothing, no consideration. I was really sad. I had this massive crush on this on this girl in my class, and I hadn't told her yet. That was the one thing I was like, I'm gonna leave without telling her.
Did you tell her?
It was really sad, man. So I just before I leave, right? Because my dad said I can't tell anyone. So I write, I can't tell anyone that I'm leaving for New Zealand. So I write her this like cheesy as like love letter, and then I give it to her a few days before I leave, and then she writes me a letter. And she said in the thing, you can't open it until you leave. It's like drama. Anyway, so we're in Jakarta airport or something en route. So I open the letter, and then basically the big long essay can be summarized with, why didn't you tell me earlier? Oh my God. I remember like,
oh my God.
I remember like breaking up in like just like so sad in the airport. I'm like, oh my God, the first person girl I ever liked. I didn't tell her. Anyway, I get to Auckland en route to Napier. I went to Napier Boys, and my dad finds his letter and he tears it up, and he's like, you don't need distractions. So I'm like, oh my God, this letter. So yeah, so then I got here to Napier and man, I'm so glad I went to Napier Boys. So glad. Like regional New Zealand, just a different life and a different world. And it's a kind of place, like, I think if I'd been in Auckland, I would have probably like spent more time with ethnic minority communities, like Indian communities, Chinese communities. Though back then in 1994, there was only 25,000 Indians anyway. Yeah. So now there's like 250,000 Indians.
Well, we've 10x.
Yeah, we've 10x'd, right? So but Napier was great. I played sport. I spent weekends on Saturday mornings walking all the way from my guardian's house to the library. And I'd spend like 2-3 hours at the library.
What would you read in the library?
Football, like maneuvers.
Okay.
Yeah, like because
like in magazines.
Like no, like theory, football theory.
Okay.
And fantasy novels. I was a fantasy and science fiction.
All that, and you're still not that good at FIFA.
Yeah, I know, man. It sucks. My hand-eye coordination's good. The way I see strategy and tactics is good.
Yeah.
But I need to spend more time FIFA. Anyway. So then 6th and 7th form, that's how I got to New Zealand.
Cool.
Yeah.
On the love thing, it's like there's this quote where it's like, of all forms of caution and love is the most dangerous. And it's like, if you're listening to this and there's someone you like, just tell them.
Right.
Just to write them a letter.
Right.
Who writes letters? No one writes letters anymore. Write them a letter.
Write them a letter. This is like,
they can't screenshot a letter. They can take a photo.
Yeah. They have those radio shows where it's, those love songs. Have you seen? Oh, I don't know if it's popular anymore, but in the 90s, there was always one radio show that I can't remember what it was in New Zealand, but it'd be love songs. And actually, they should bring this back. It was so cute. People would dial in and dedicate songs. Have you heard this before?
I haven't heard of this from like.
Oh.
No, this sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
So they don't sing the song. They just say, "Hey, I want to play Perfect by Ed Sheeran for the love of my life, my wife."
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was the thing. And it was so sweet. Cheesier times. Anyway.
Bring it back.
Yeah. But to your point about, like having a crack and saying, and you'd hear like staunch ass guys going, I would like to dedicate this song to my wife for that. Anyway. Yeah.
Funny.
We've gone from New Zealand and making better to like love songs. What are you doing?
It's all linked.
Oh, I see. I see. Right. Got it.
Love will make the world a better place.
Got it. Yeah.
And then we'll be more at peace and we'll make better decisions. And then Putin won't feel the need to invade another country and sit in this massive table where he's at the head of it. And there's like 8 people 40 meters away, so they can't poison him. I'm like, bro, this looks like a Dune movie set. What's happening? If that guy told some girl he liked back then, who knows? Who knows where we'd be?
That's the YTD movie of Putin.
Yeah,
it's going to be a heartbreak story.
It's good.
Putin's going to be this like, and Taika's version is going to be like this guy, and he just had a crush on a girl, and then he became this Russian megalomaniac. But it was just this heartbreak story.
Heartbreak, What if you got into art school?
Yeah. Sorry, this was funny. Okay. Anyway.
All right, so you're in Napier, and then you're like, cool, I want to leave Napier.
Yeah.
And when did you do that?
I was so pumped up coming to Auckland because I thought Auckland was going to be clubs. Like I was going to hit the dance clubs.
So you found no woman in Napier. Yeah. You're like, maybe Auckland is where it's at.
No. Anyway, so I went to Auckland, and best year of my life. Best year of my life is O'Rourke Hall of Residence. I remember life just exploding. I remember my first sculling competition in the O'Rourke volleyball court, a basketball court, and it was Guinness. Yeah, and I was 17. I was 17 when I got into university. And I hadn't really drunk beer before. And I was like, okay. So I, because I'm trying to make sure that we win, I open-throated it and I got it right. And everyone's like, whoa.
You just had that technique?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. So I open-throated it and it just went down. I think it was more like the pressure of like, I got to do this for the team, right? Yeah. Anyway, I do it. And it seemed like such a simple thing. And then like 2 minutes later, I'm throwing up on the side because that's what happens when you scull Guinness.
And it's just black. It's just terrible.
Yeah. O'Rourke was awesome. I loved it. Just the conversations. I remember going to Wairera thermal pools.
Oh, bring back Wairera.
Yeah, that's right.
Where's Wairera?
That's right. And when we came down with the bus, on the bus from O'Rourke, in the middle of Queen Street, all of us like got out and ran circles around the bus at every light. I remember for people's birthdays, putting people in a trolley and then rolling it down Queen Street.
Oh my God.
And right at the end of Queen Street, all there was a fountain. And this was safe and it was fun and it was calm. Back then, people would still walk. Because it was nearly like there was this like very safe feeling to Auckland, like in regional New Zealand, Napier and stuff. I don't think it happens anymore. People just walk barefoot and pack and save and stuff, right? I don't know if it happens much, but in Auckland, like we'd still do that,
I still do that sometimes, but it's rare.
Yeah, it's very rare.
In fact, it makes the news. Someone walked barefoot in Sylvia Park, and I read a news article about it, and I'm like, why is this news? Anyway,
so I went to O'Rourke, went to university. University is really good from a social sense. I'd go to a lot of classes, and I'd go to the first lecture, and I'd listen to the lecture and be like, "This is easy." I'd listen to like complex mathematics, and I'd be like, "I get it. I get the framework, the model, blah blah blah," and I'd be like, "Okay, I don't need to study anymore," and the assignments are boring. And then about about halfway through the course, I'd be like, oh my goodness, okay, I need to actually learn things. And then I'd freak out, and unfortunately I'd fail. And I did that too many times. Just because I think I wasn't clear why I was studying what I was studying.
Which was?
I started off with a BTech in information technology. Then I changed to industrial mathematics.
Industrial mathematics.
Yeah, I know, man.
What was that?
It's
like maths with a hard hat on.
It's what a brown guy does when they don't get into electrical engineering.
I see.
And then they're like, oh, I still need to show that I have like high numeracy skills.
Right.
And I have social pressure. Then you do industrial mathematics.
Okay. Accounting was like two. This is like
chill out. No BCom for like got to do like some science based. All kinds of nonsense that you think you have to operate in. Anyway. So, and then I ended up with a stats degree. The cool thing was, as I was graduating, I was part of like the first cohort that walked through Icehouse.
Cool.
And kind of like helped Icehouse like into like some sort of like voluntary thing come to reality. So it's amazing to come full circle nearly 25 years ago and like make a dent in the startup sector in New Zealand. Yeah.
I mean, stuff you did back then. I had no idea you set up the MCC. Was BP there back then?
Yeah,
as well?
Brendan Potter deserves a knighthood.
Wow.
Yeah, 100%. Like one of the most all I've wanted in my life is a life full of stories. Right. I was very clear when I was really young, because at the end of the day, I thought that's all you have, just stories. Right.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope.
And you want to leave, what you leave behind is stories. So then from a very young age, I was like, okay, I need to make meaningful change.
How old are you when you like?
Probably 15.
Have you read something?
Yeah. When I was really young, I read a lot of like Indian spiritual texts and stuff like that.
Like
and
Gita?
Gita and a lot of other mythology. And a lot of it was around detachment and how when you detach from things, having less attachment to things means you have less pain.
Mm-hmm.
So you abstract yourself, like being able to. There's a wonderful like material way of seeing this. So you can think of life as a first shooter game, like where you've got the gun, or you can think of life as a third perspective shooter game where you're looking at the person.
These don't have to be shooter games, but yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Where you're looking at the character, like and so you can look at yourself. And if you can take that perspective, then I think you have a lot more peace, right? You're not so personally afflicted by the things that happen. Anyway, so I got
just on that, like it's legit something you can do to make it more. I think most people have played Sims, and sometimes it's fun to just zoom out and just see yourself as a Sims character. I would look at my life, and sometimes still do. I'm like, fuck. I remember playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So I only started working out about a year ago. But I would play this game, San Andreas, and you could hold down shift. In most games, you hold down shift to run faster as opposed to walking. But in some games, they give you stamina. So you can only run for a certain amount of time. And in the game, I was just frustrated. I wasn't able to sprint for long enough. So I would go to the gym in a game and run on the treadmill in a game for ages to get my stamina up. But then up until recently, like I did Taekwondo for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't stretch. I would just coast on natural talent.
Yeah.
And not just be like, oh, I can like, literally I've played the blueprint in a game. If you want to, she's like, what do I need to do? Oh, I just need to do these things, just do these things. But for some reason, just blind or unwilling to do it in real life, meanwhile doing it in the game. But if you treat life like a game, then maybe that's the flip.
Yeah, I mean, because we're not objective, right? We lose our objectivity in regards to ourselves. So if you can, I mean, there are some simple mechanisms around this. You can, one, pick up the behavior of like looking at yourself from an abstract perspective and going, this is going to sound really odd, but how's Mahesh doing? Right? Like, and literally have that conversation. Preferably not out aloud when you're walking down Queen Street.
Yeah.
But like try that form, or set up simple systems where people who you care and you trust can be very frank with you. So it's a thing that I use all the time in my life. I always ask, what do you think? What do you think? Am I doing something wrong? I am surprised by. I think I'd like to see. It'd be good if more people did that, but
more people ask that question.
Yeah, what could I do better? did I do something wrong? What do you think I could be better? What do you think I'm better? And you're giving away power, right? You're giving away power. You're asking people for feedback. And if you can create those.
You feel like you are, but you're not, right? Because you're like, you don't have to do anything they say. All you're doing is getting more information.
Correct.
I'm going to do this more often.
Correct. It's amazing how little people do that because it's incredibly valuable. It as long as you can step away from, I mean, the hard thing is, wait, are you criticizing me? This was lucky. I was lucky. My mom made sure through a lot of penance and telling off, and that's a huge understatement, as most brown guys know. She made it very clear to me, and she got ingrained to me that feedback is a blessing. And if someone's going to give you feedback, you're lucky. Doesn't seem to work with my wife so much, but yeah.
Yep.
but yeah. So anyway, I got through stats, got through university, was one of the first baristas at Starbucks in Queen Street. A lot of people know this now, I suppose. I won a reality TV show, ended up being on fire in New Zealand.
I think you just need a bit more emphasis on I was literally on fire, a landmine, which really you only hear about in like Cambodia or Vietnam. You must be New Zealand's first landmine injury, maybe last landmine injury.
It's funny, right? Earlier on, I said I wanted a life full of stories. I've had a life full of stories, and I want more. I want a few more. Like being on fire is pretty nuts, man.
Yeah.
It's like you're literally on fire.
What does it feel like?
Whew. Like I know what sheer panic feels like.
Okay.
I know what absolute, like I can remember so clearly just it's life or death. Like it's just like there's nothing going through your head other than I am flapping my arms uselessly trying to put out the flames.
How big is what's happened?
It's exploded. My upper torso catches.
Where is it in response to you?
So it's right at my feet.
Oh shit.
Right, yeah.
I thought it was like a couple meters away.
Oh, no. It was right at my feet. Like okay. I was walking and I was right on top of it. Bang, explosion. Upper torso just lights up. Right? Upper torso just lights up. And it's just, I know what panic feels like. And fortunately, I hear someone yell, stop, drop, and roll. And someone yells, stop, drop, and roll. And Manu Bennett jumps on me and saves me. And I think this is where one of my, probably a real strength of mine kicks in. When things are complex or chaos or chaotic, I'm very clear. Because I understand priorities. I understand, okay, got to do A, got to do B, got to do C.
You stop, you got to drop,
yeah.
you got to roll. It's A, B, C.
Because the sad thing was, because of the chaos in that situation, they'd let the safety officer go home. The person who took charge was me. I was like, okay, do this and do this. And
afterwards?
Do this. Yeah. I think it's because I feel like I need to take ownership.
Well, I mean, fucking... At some point, you realize that it's on you.
Correct.
It's your life.
Correct.
And you're like, well, I could rely on these people to do this, but they haven't done it properly so far. And to chime in with my not being on fire story, but a couple years ago, very early on in the company, some of the co-founders I felt weren't working as hard as they should have been, in air quotes. And I was like, why aren't these guys putting in as much effort? Like they should be doing more. And then I read this book by Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership.
That's right.
And I was like, wait a minute. What? They joined the startup because they're motivated. They want to solve this problem. And intrinsically, they do want to do stuff. So like, clearly that's not the problem. I'm like, what could I be doing that would motivate them more? What if I went and got some more sales conversations going? Would that motivate them more to do it? And so I just brought all of that back on me. I wasn't blaming other people. I was like, what can I do? And then I just did those things, and sure enough, things sort of fell into line. But it's like, this is great. I wasn't sure how to phrase this for so long, because a lot of things happen to you and it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. So you're like, okay, I sit on fire. It's not my fault, but it's not an excuse for you to just lay there and die. Like, you got to do something about it.
My father would, so I only really hit me about 10 years ago. If you put the socioeconomic levels of the whole world on a ruler, I would be in the lower socioeconomic bucket. I never felt that way, like where my family came from and stuff like that.
This is back when you guys in Singapore?
Yeah, Singapore, India, like where our ancestry is, like where wealth lies, right? So mainly because I think I never wanted that much, but that's where I came from.
Yeah.
My father, when I used to come back from my playground in Singapore as a 7 or 8, 9-year-old, if I was 2 minutes late from the playground or a minute late, he would lock the door and he would say, well, you're late, so you're fired. Right? Like, I mean, if you were in a company, you'd be fired. And if something went wrong with me in life, he would go, well, who are you going to blame? Like, there's nobody else to blame. It's just you. And I was very fortunate that he passed that on to me. It was tough. I tried passing it on to my sister. That didn't work out so well. Like second child, first child kind of thing. Yeah. But I mean, it's so good, right? Like, because at a very young age, in my head, I was like, there's no one else to blame. Like, he makes good points. There's like, no one else to blame.
I can't argue with this logic.
I can't argue with this logic. Who else can I blame? I only have control over one person. True control.
Yeah.
It's me. Okay. So what's the point? So to your point about extreme ownership and so many things in life, I've made so many mistakes in my life. So many. I have failed so much. But I don't think I ever blame anyone. I don't think I ever blame anyone. I'm always, what did I get wrong? What did I not understand? When I got made redundant during the global financial crisis, after graduating and working and doing well in a career in professional services recruitment, the GFC happened. And I didn't get angry. I just went, I don't understand. Like, what was in this economic system and the broader that happened that made me feel redundant and made me feel like I lost value, my value relation with society. I didn't get angry. I was like, I'm curious, and what did I get wrong? I need to understand this. It's maybe the most powerful way to like survive, right? Because I'm not going to blame anyone.
I'd say more than survive. It's perhaps the only way to thrive.
It's maybe the most powerful way. You need support systems. You need backup. You have a foundation. You have education. You have all of these things. But having that resiliency, and when you come back to New Zealand, right? Something that New Zealand needs is economic resilience. We're 5 million people. When we get hit, we get hit. So we need to become more anti-fragile. We need to become more resilient. So I think that part of our culture just needs to we just need to find that groove again.
Yeah, hard to do when we're so isolated. We're like, not only are we a country of 5 million people, we're also a country of 5 million people on the other side of the world. And the closest place to us is Australia, which is 20 million people. Still not that many people. How many people in India?
1.6 or 1.8 billion.
1.8 now. Okay, so they have, what's the maths on that? Almost 80 times more people. So yeah, definitely some unique challenges for us.
Yeah, for sure. Singapore is 60K by 40K. 3 million people. One of the highest GDP per capita in the world. Right? So
they've got a location hack.
This is true. Good point. And they were
there are other countries in the same region, which also have location hack, and they haven't.
I love it. Look. But going back to this, and this is not an excuse. This is an opportunity. We're close to one side of the US. We have an unfair advantage with Southeast Asia. We have an unfair advantage with India. We have an unfair advantage with China because, unlike the Australians, we are more neutral in regards to our opinions around the world, right? We don't need to feel like, well, we can't, but we don't feel like we need to go boss people around or anything. New Zealand's wonderful in the sense that, hey, we're not Switzerland. We have opinions.
Yeah, but my understanding is we move either first or last on things, and so there's a few things worldwide where we've moved first on.
Yeah,
and then a few things we're like, cool, let's take
correct. Like we have strong, a good sense of morality, our compassion, our sense of what's right and wrong, but we're not in the business of telling other countries how to live their lives.
Sure, who's going to listen?
Right. Yeah. Sure, but we're culturally not there, right? So we've got so much going for us. I am so sure that New Zealand will absolutely fulfill its ambition of being a truly amazing country in the next 20, 30 years. And what I mean by amazing is somewhere where all Kiwis here and everybody that is here has equitable access to education, equitable access to healthcare, equitable access to safety, security, where so much of that is subsidized. And we have an amazing tech hub. We have high income jobs. Our public services and infrastructure work incredibly well. And New Zealand is an incredibly proud nation that the rest of the world's like, oh my God, like if only we could be like New Zealand. I'm sure we'll get there.
And buses come more than every half an hour.
This is
sometimes.
true. Yeah, they don't.
That would be, that's where I'm like, hey, I don't catch buses anymore. It's like, how do you, if I'm going to work and there's a bus every half an hour and I'm just at the bus stop and it's like, oh, cool, due in 5 minutes. Sweet, I got here early. It's like, oh, due in 3 minutes. You're like, cool. And then it's like, due. You're like, oh, must be arriving soon. And then it disappears. The bus hasn't turned up yet. And you're like, did I just blink too long for a second? And then now you just have to wait for the next bus and you're half an hour late to work. Like, you can't talk about safety. Like, you can't, there's no time safety. And that's why all our motorways are clogged.
We need to be a country where public transport is awesome and it's prevalent across everywhere. We need to get the economics of it right in regards to population, where we put it, how we stage it, all of that. But yeah, so yeah.
But also all those other things, definitely. I'm looking forward to what New Zealand will transform into, and it's like,
yeah. I mean, you have a huge part to play, right? Like you do, and you and Toby from Easy Rent, and Amber from Next Work, and Jordan at Kami, and all of you have a critical part to play.
I think people don't realize this. It's like the world changes, and the long arc of history bends towards moral justice or whatever. But like, it changes because people do stuff. And you're a person, and you can actually do stuff. Like, you can be like, I want this thing to be different. I want the beach to be cleaner. There's too much rubbish on the beach. Spend half an hour, walk the beach, pick up rubbish, do it for a month. Beach is cleaner now, and your goal is achieved. And you didn't have to involve any government. You just fucking did it yourself. And you just scale that up to whatever you want. I'm like, New Zealand doesn't dream big enough. I'm just gonna host a massive exhibition and get people to dream big.
That's right. Can you tell people about the exhibition, please? Again, it's such an amazing thing.
The goal is, so earlier we were talking about, well, New Zealand has everything it needs to succeed, right? Like, we have, firstly, I tell people this and they're like, what? We're one of 5 countries in the world where English is the first language. And people are like, what? no way. I'm like, yeah, America, Canada, Australia, UK, and New Zealand. The only 5 countries in the world which speak English as the primary language. That's a massive advantage. And so we have that. And then we are a first world country. We have access to technology. Not everyone does. And it could be better. But it's like, we can be doing a lot more than we are doing. We're like, oh, we punch above our weights with the All Blacks. And now we have Israel Adesanya. And there's a few people punching above the weight. But it's like, actually, we are not just like Auckland. You're like, Auckland, where it should be and where it is, there's a gap there. And I'm like, it's the same with New Zealand. I'm like, sure, Callahan, make it hard to get money, but eventually you give out money. I shouldn't say that because they do give us money, but there's all this admin and they got to know there's all this admin. They're like, you lodge your hours, and I'm like, I'm a startup. But anyway, it's all good to have all this money, and it's all good to be like, cool, we're gonna give this money away for innovation, but you need innovators. You need people who are like, hey, I'm down in Invercargill, and my probably most likely path is to end up at the steel mill, but I really like rockets. I'm going to build rockets. You're like, what are you doing, kid down in Invercargill? You're 10 years old. You can't build rockets. And this kid's like, watch me. And then he makes Rocket Lab. And now we have a manufacturing facility in Mount Wellington, and we make rockets and we fire rockets into space. And before that, there was no space industry in New Zealand. So all I want is a country where we have so much opportunity, and I just want people to be like, well, what do I want to do? What makes the world a better place? The world's a better place when the distance between what you want to do and what you are doing is effectively zero. Like, I want to do this thing. Cool. Do this thing. Not, I want to do this thing. Oh, what will people think? Will people support me? You know, oh, I want to be I want to be an actor. And then it's like, what? You can't be an actor. That's the tall poppy thing, right? He's like, oh, I want to make this. I want to change the way people change careers around the world. And it's like, around the world? What are you talking about? You should be a teacher. It's like, nah. I want people to have really big dreams and then take action towards them. And that's the basis of the exhibition. And the way we're doing it is real fucking cool. And you'll see it'll be like being inside a Monet painting. And currently New Zealand's like this. And the goal for the exhibition is to make New Zealand bloop and start going up. Hopefully that came through in audio form, but I did a flat line on a slight positive gradient. And then I made it go exponential, and from the point where the exhibition was. And the way we're doing that is by showing, firstly, we're getting people who have, air quotes, succeeded, and being like, actually, you know, Helen Clark, second highest rated person in the UN, she grew up on a sheep and cattle farm, and she was once just a little girl.
She was an operator.
Yeah. But before that, she was a little girl.
That's right. In New Zealand.
In New Zealand, on a sheep and cattle farm in the West Waikato. Right. It's like, how does a farm girl become the second highest person in the UN? That's crazy. And so first I'll be showing these people, it's just normal people. So you walk in and you'll be like, who's this little girl? As a 12-year-old, you're like, this little girl looks like me. Who is this? Because you never see Helen Clark as a little girl. You see Helen Clark as a 70-year-old woman.
That's right.
So I'm like, hey. And you're like, who's this little boy? Kind of looks like me. And then like, oh, this is Taika Waititi when he was a kid. He's like, oh, I forgot Taika Waititi was a kid and he had all this potential just like me. Maybe if he can do it, I can do it. And then we walk you into this dreamscape, which is a lot of Kiwi dreams. A lot of Kiwi dreams on these titanium poppies, which are anodized to each unique color. And you walk into this cathedral, this dreamscape, and you're like, whoa, this is the dreams of a nation. And as an audience member, you can't help but be like, well, what's my dream? We didn't even have to tell you to think about it. You're just in there. You're like, well, what's my dream? And then the final component is the action component, where last time I ran an exhibition, maybe 3 years ago now, we had 1,200 people show up in person. And this was during COVID level 2.5. So I think we had the same amount of people show up as like the Auckland Art Gallery did during the same period, because nobody was going out. But anyway, a lot of people came through, and then there was all this inspiration that kind of just dissipated. And I'm like, we need to harness this inspiration and tell people what to do with it. It's like, well, you want to be a movie director? You're 12 years old. What can you do? You have a phone, probably. You shouldn't, because you should wait till you're 13, as the research says. But you got a phone. Record 10 minutes of video a day, every day for a year, and see where you end up. You want to be a cricket player? I asked Kane Williamson. I was like, Kane, what were you doing when you were 5 years old? What were you doing? He's like, oh, I would come home, and in our garage we would have a tennis ball and a string, and I would just hit that with a bat just for hours. Any kid can do that. You want to be Kane Williamson? Hit a ball and a string for hours a day.
But it's what I talked about earlier in regards to those three situations, right? Unconscious, portfolio. Go nuts on one thing.
Go nuts. You're all in. Like, you wake up call for some people. You will die. Like, regardless of what you do in this life, you will die. And maybe you get to come back if you're a Hindu. Maybe you're stuck in Samadhi, and the rain cloud becomes rain, becomes the sea, and sure, maybe you just transform. But this current version of you get one shot, and just think about why you're not doing stuff. Or firstly, think about, in your wildest dreams, what would you do? Just your wildest dreams. And then you'll be like, well, why am I not doing that thing? And if it's fear, fuck that. Just never not do something because of fear. And it's hard. It's a battle every single day. It requires a lot of introspection. But if you can just get past that fear, then you can go all in on this one thing. And you just get to live a deep life full of stories, which is all I want as well. I'm like, I
think what you're doing is incredible. I think it's I think New Zealand has an opportunity to dream a lot more. It's why I go into lecture theaters, and I do I lecture at a lot of classes, and I share my quick story, and I start off with, I was in your shoes, right? I was right there 25 years ago. I failed a lot of papers. I had an 80K student loan. I didn't have enough money, and I struggled through life, and I think there was like a week or two where I slept in a car. GFC made me redundant. Even though I got a scholarship for my MBA, I couldn't afford enough money, so I slept in the student common rooms. I been through divorce and been on fire and all of this stuff, tough challenge. And I share all this stuff very openly. I've also started the Management Consulting Club, started the Startup Club. And the Management Consulting Club, in my opinion, has probably changed the lives of probably 5 to 10,000 of students in University of Auckland, right? Canva is used by 5 million users every day, right? And I was number 25, and I helped make Canva into a reality.
So you were there from 25 people to 250 people?
Yeah, 250 people.
And how many people did you hire? Because you were in charge of.
I was initially across all operations, and then focused on head of people, probably 100, 150,
So literally, you built the team which built Canva.
Correct. Absolutely. I remember when Cliff came up to me, and I get it, Mahesh. It's about the machine that makes the machine, which is the people team, right? It's about getting the people team sorted, which then allows for high growth to happen. So you need a high performance people team that then gets all the incentives, disincentives, systems, onboarding, training, everything, because then you can go all right, we're going this direction. This is our plan. We need more people fast, right? Anyway, I did that, and Mel was 23 years old. And I think 2 years ago, she donated $16 billion, right? And I share, and the first
16 billion.
Yeah.
So to put that into perspective, I'm pretty sure New Zealand's budget is about 80 billion per year.
So she set aside 16 billion.
Yeah, still.
Right? Yeah. and the first 10 to 150, 200 Canva knots will probably be worth 10 to 200 million, right? And I share these things very transparently because that's important. Those are the stories from Atlassian and what's happened in the US, which then gave confidence for Australia to start taking a higher risk approach around, oh, this is a thing. Like you can build a product and scale it to the world, and there's a lot of value that can be created, tens and hundreds of thousands of jobs, new professions, new income standards, etc. And I share this information transparently and vulnerably so that it invokes ideas. I mean, the phase one community is a great example of that, right? Like in a very vulnerable conversation and time spent with me, and I had huge privilege in sharing with them, makes it more accessible for young Kiwis to go, okay, like, fine, you seem kind of cool and you've done some cool stuff, but you were where I was 25 years ago. And the cool thing is, then a few of them, like yourself, have a bit more success. And then the next group look at you and you're like, oh, you're not that different to me. Wow, maybe I can do what you're doing. So it's those stories and that role modeling that makes things accessible. And that was my number one goal. I realized what New Zealand lacked was role models and stories in regards to, what's possible. So that's what I worked on the last 2.5 years in New Zealand before I started the political piece. But yeah.
Yeah, and why the political piece? Because, having done well at Canva and then Itasca, in your early 40s, don't need to work anymore. You could just sip margaritas on the beach for 6 months and then get bored of that, and then be like, maybe I want to build something. And you could build a company. You could raise tens of millions of dollars probably fairly easily and solve some problem, and maybe in a more effective way. Why New Zealand? Because you came back for this, right? Why New Zealand? Why politics?
I love this country. I love the idea of this country. It's a diverse country. We have an opportunity to do right by tangata whenua. And that's really important to me. Like, my conscience is really important to me. And New Zealand, by far and beyond, allows me to keep my conscience clear far easier than, and I had access to a green card and I never took it. Because it's just a simpler life, and I think it's such a privilege to have access to such a beautiful story that New Zealand offers. And I want to, I mean, it's incredible, right? Like, we can be Sweden, Denmark, Norway, but diverse with a bicultural foundation and a multicultural future. What an extraordinary thing to achieve. What an incredible thing to role model for the world, right? Singapore's kind of done it, not the bicultural piece.
It's actually worth just emphasizing, because a lot of people will be like, oh, Sweden's, all the Nordic countries, they're egalitarian and they're equitable, and I'm like, they're 99.9% white. Like, it's this, like, of course they get along. They're all the same people, and then they'll probably just find some other tribe which isn't in their community to tribal war over. So I just wanted to stress that.
I just want to be very clear. Those are Ang's words, not my words.
Those are my words. I'm not getting into politics. Yeah. So.
But I think the diversity that we have, it makes things, it creates tension, because it means that there's more misunderstandings. There's more things to learn. But when you work through that, it allows for creativity. It allows for more opportunity. It makes the world safer. We understand what's common amongst us and allows for creativity, right? And New Zealand has this opportunity. And to be an adopted son of the country, and to have the opportunity to spend, I suppose, my last, for the lack of better words, professional chapter serving this is amazing. Also, because of my transient journey. Born in India, went to Singapore when I was 2, left Singapore when I was 14 years old, was in New Zealand from when I was 14 to like 26 or 27. and then was overseas for a good period of time, nearly like 12 years. I decided that when somewhere in my 20s or my late teens, I decided New Zealand was home. That was a conscious decision on my part. This is my country. This is what I'm coming back to serve. And that's really important. Yeah, this is really important. My identity is very important to me. So this is my country. This is why. When I became a New Zealand citizen, that was a very powerful moment to me. To give up the Indian citizenship was a very powerful thing for me, right? Because this is my allegiance. So when I became a New Zealand citizen, I was like, yeah, you and me, let's go. So the opportunity to serve this country and what an amazing country, and make it better for a period of time. And I think my wife, amazing wife who's Australian, tells me all the time, she thinks I'd be better serving the country in other avenues. But the government is the most powerful institute in a country.
Yeah, it's a hell of a company.
Yeah, it's so to make sure it's running properly and playing a small cog in regards to making sure that you execute properly and decision making is done well, and serving community. Yeah, I just told myself that story a long time ago, so I suppose I'm trying to fulfill that last chapter.
Yeah, what happened on that second date?
Yeah. So it was nearly 12 years ago on a second date with Pravina. I told her I was going to come back home and serve New Zealand in politics. I told everyone when I joined Canva. I told them whenever I asked. It's because I feel very important. It's very important for me to manage expectations. So I'm like, hey, by the way, just want to let you know, I'm going there. That's my goal. Like, because this is really important to me. These are the things that are important to me, so that I don't like mismanage expectations. And I think the vast majority of people are like, sure, man. Yeah. Okay. You do you. And I think Pravina was pretty much that. The joke she makes now is, what a lame ass pickup line. Right. So
it worked.
yeah, totally. But yeah, and I think I'm very fortunate. Her risk tolerance is very different to mine, but she has seen me time and time again say that I'll do something and then do it.
It's something, I don't know how much I've told you. When I first met you, it was through another connection, and they're like, oh, this guy was at Canva. And I'm like, okay, sure he was. And so I meet you at some, like, I think it was the Olympic, like, tennis club or something.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh yeah, this guy seems all right. Sure he was at Canva.
Yeah.
I'm like, Canva's got lots of employees.
Yeah.
And then later we get to know each other, and you're like, oh shit, this guy was actually he was number 25 at Canva. He was involved. And then you're like, oh, I'm building this like incubator. I was like, here's another incubator. Let's see. And then these companies which have come out of it, and sure, they're like early stage, and I'm like, oh shit, these are like legit companies, and you just fucking started this thing out of nothing. And then I meet a friend of mine, Tim, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm in this thing. I was like, what? Wait, you're in this thing? Like, you're legit as fuck, and I had no idea you were even associated. And so I was like, shit, time and time again. Like, I was skeptical when I first met you. And then time and time again, I've just seen you execute and do the things that you're going to do. Do the things that you say you're going to do, which is usually not synonymous with politicians, right? Politicians are like, I'll do this thing. And then you don't hear about it. No one holds them accountable. And then 3 years later, you just make some more promises. And normally I stay away from politics. I'm like, fucking Siebes, it's just going to go around again in this short-term incentive weird game. But with you, I was like, oh, here's someone who I believe is actually going to execute, who first of all doesn't need to do this. Like, there's some politicians who are like just like career politicians, and if they stop being politicians, you're like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Who else is going to pay you 150 grand a year to like whatever, 300 grand a year? Whereas with you, I'm like, well, you don't need the money. Like, you don't need to do that. And so I'm like, cool. I believe you're in it for the right reasons, which is you like New Zealand and you think this is the most effective way to help New Zealand. And then I've seen you actually execute. So I'm like, cool, I'll back you, man. So yeah, excited to see this journey.
I think I can't remember his name, Vivek, whatever his name is, Nalkant or
Ravnikant.
Ravikant. He talks
Naval.
about Naval. Sorry, I'm not
completely wrong name.
Bro, I'm not so sophisticated around these guys. After my time, for me it was just Gates and not Gates, Jobs and Paul Graham and these guys. Anyway, he talks about how it's very powerful to be able to start a journey, do really well, or see you want to get to some top of the hill and get to 3/4 and go, oh, this isn't the right way. And a lot of people find it challenging because they're like, oh, shucks, I got 3/4 of the way. I think it's quite valuable if you can really like, okay, go back to ground zero, let's start again.
Because you see some other hill which is worth climbing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. But it's dealing with the discomfort of the waste, right? The supposed waste.
That sunk cost fallacy
gets you, right?
People stay in relationships they fucking shouldn't.
Okay, his quotes, not mine. All right, his quotes, not mine. Anyway, so I love the fact that I'm knocking on doors. I love it. It's the best part of what I'm doing. I get to hear stories. I have like people who have no idea of anything about me complain to me, tell me off, give me feedback, and I get to listen. I get to hear things, and people tell me about their lives, and it's like so grassroots, and it's such a privilege, right? So it's really nice to be able to go back to like ground zero and go, okay, like you lay a foundation, you understand things, and I am in this for such a long haul. I am in such a long haul for Auckland Central, for New Zealand. In a weird way, I understand my irrelevance. I'm just a data point, but I'm so looking forward to serving. Sometimes I get asked about, oh, what portfolio do you want? I don't give two hoots, man. Like, I just want Auckland Central, like, winning, and I want this place winning, and I want New Zealand winning. Like, it's such a privilege to serve, and that sounds so cheesy, but now
it sounds genuine.
Yeah. I mean, I have a track record now. Like, I've done this time and time again. So
cool. I can think of no better place to leave it.
Thank you so much. This was so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is going to turn out, but like, yeah, this is interesting.
Well, if people have as much fun listening as we did talking, then I think we'll do all right. Like this podcast is such a hack because the first episode, Matt, I don't know if you met him, Kiwi chef, started a restaurant in New York City. He's like, I want to win a Michelin star in like 3 years. Gets it in 4 months.
Really?
Gets it in 4 months. You're like, what?
Wow.
And he's just like, Ang, let's do a podcast. I was like, all right, when are you free? And then it just didn't happen for a while. And he's like, cool, I'm free. My wife and kids are away. I was like, cool, just walk up. I've got all the equipment. And then we just did it. And then I was like, what do I call this thing? And I'm driving to the office, and I was like, oh, the human experience. That'll be a thing. But it's really just a hack to talk to my friends in a deeper way, and then disseminate hopefully some of the lessons we've learned, some jokes, some entertainment. But it's just fun. So thank you for joining me on the Human Experience podcast. Looking forward to seeing where our parts end up.
Yeah.
And then the cool part about this, I just did one with my dad as well, is like we now have this conversation forever, unless someone hacks Google. So, in 20 years time, when you're 63 and I'm 49.
My God. Stop it, Ang.
Or in 14 years time when I'm your age and you're 57, then we can look back on this.
I need to go to the gym. Like, I need to get into shape, man. Fire up. Like,
when you're ready, let me know. I'll join you.
All right.
Cheers, bro.
Thank you so much.